Welcome back to Power in the Pause. I'm your host, Chelsea, and this is the space where we slow down, breathe for a second, and remember that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is pause. Today, I want to talk about a voice that many of us hear every single day. The one that tells you that you should have done more. The one that replays the conversation after it's over. The one that notices every mistake, every awkward moment, everything you wish you would have said differently. Your inner critic. Now, most of us have been taught that this voice is the enemy, that we need to silence it, shut it down, or get rid of it altogether, myself included. But what if we've been misunderstanding it? What if this inner critic isn't actually trying to hurt you? What if it's trying to protect you? Okay, stay with me, sis. Because I think a lot of women are carrying around shame for having this voice without ever stopping to ask, where did it come from? Sis, for a lot of us, that voice showed up because somewhere along the way, we learned that being perfect felt safer than being ourselves. Maybe criticism was common. Maybe mistakes weren't really allowed. Maybe expressing anger, sadness, fear, or disappointment felt risky when you were growing up. Maybe you learned that being agreeable, successful, easygoing, or low maintenance got you love, approval, or at least kept the peace. So your brain did what brains do. It adapted. It figured out a way to help. It started paying attention to what got people criticized, rejected, or judged. And then your brain said, don't worry, I'll handle this. I'll make sure that doesn't ever happen again. And just like that, your inner critic was born. And it's not because you're weak. It's not because there's something wrong with you. Because you were trying to feel safe. That voice became the part of you that stayed alert. The part that tried to stay 10 steps ahead. The part that whispered things to you like, work harder. Don't mess this up. Be better. Don't give anyone a reason to criticize you. And honestly, sis, for a while, it probably worked. It helped you navigate situations that felt hard. It helped you avoid conflict, helped you earn approval. It helped you survive environments where being hyper-aware felt necessary. So in a strange way, that voice may have become the protector that you needed, the advisor that you leaned on, the one constantly scanning for danger, not because it hated you, but because it cared so deeply about keeping you safe. The hard part is that some of us are still taking advice from a version of ourselves that was just trying to survive when we were a kid. And maybe that's why you're exhausted, sis, because it's so hard to rest when someone is constantly evaluating you, especially when that someone is you. Sound familiar? Somewhere along the way, we started believing that if we beat everyone else to the punch, we'd be okay. If I point out my flaws first, nobody else can use them against me. If I stay 10 steps ahead, maybe I won't disappoint anyone. If I'm perfect, maybe I'll finally feel safe. But that's a really heavy way to live, because no matter how hard you try, perfection keeps moving the finish line. The bar is always moving. And the voice promising protection eventually becomes the voice stealing your peace. So I want to invite you to pause here for a moment with me. Let's stop and take a breath. Inhale, pause, exhale. Again. Inhale, pause, exhale. Now ask yourself, what if my inner critic isn't my enemy? What if it's been a sacred protector? What if underneath all that criticism is actually fear? The fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of disappointing someone, fear of not being enough. And can we just acknowledge something for a second? That younger version of you was carrying a lot. She was trying to figure out how to be loved, accepted, and safe with the tools that she had. Of course she created strategies. Of course she became hyper-aware. Of course she learned to criticize herself before anyone else could. That wasn't weakness. That was survival. The problem is that survival skills aren't always meant to become lifelong identities. At some point, we have to ask ourselves if the things that once protected us are even still serving us. Because healing isn't about letting the inner critic run the show, but it's also not about shaming it into silence. It's about getting curious. And instead of asking, what's wrong with me? We start asking, what is this part of me trying to protect me from? It's a whole different conversation. It's a gentler conversation, a more honest conversation. And the truth is, your inner critic isn't the voice of wisdom. It's the voice of fear, pretending to be wisdom. Fear says, be perfect. Wisdom says, be human. Fear says, don't make mistakes. Wisdom says, that's how you learn. Fear says, you have to earn your worth. Wisdom says, your worth was never up for debate. And maybe that's the invitation today. It's not to fight the critic, not to hate it, but to recognize it for what it is. A protective part of you that worked overtime for a long time. And then gently remind it, thank you for trying to keep me safe. But I don't need that level of protection anymore. The critic may still have something to say tomorrow, but it doesn't get the final vote. You do. Thank you for being here with me today, sis. And if this episode resonated with you, share it with another woman who might be carrying the weight of her own inner critic. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. And always remember, there's power in the pause.